Did you know there are 18 car features inside your own car that destroys your car's reliability? And not only that, car manufacturers hide this from you. From touchscreens that fails and assist feature that doesn't work. These are the stupid features that will cost you big time. Let's dive in. Feature number 18, steering wheel controls. They were supposed to make driving easier, but somewhere along the way, steering wheel controls became a mess. You've got buttons, toggles, and scroll pads all crammed into one tiny space. And the layout, completely random. Volume goes side to side, track changes go up and down. Or is it the other way around? Depends on the car, depends on the software update. Some buttons sit right under your thumb. Others require finger gymnastics just to skip a song. And while you're searching, even for half a second, your eyes leave the road. That's not safer. That's a crash waiting to happen. But here's what gets worse. Use them often, and they don't age well either. Sticky buttons. Delayed response. Sometimes they just stop working altogether. A feature that was supposed to simplify your drive. Now it's just another thing that breaks. And when these controls fail, you lose access to crucial functions like cruise control, phone calls, and audio, all while driving. Here's the kicker though. Every manufacturer has their own layout logic. Switch cars and you're back to playing button roulette. But if steering wheel button chaos sounds bad, wait until your roof becomes a safety hazard. Feature number 17, lane keeping assist. I know we'll touch on driver assist systems later, but here's the thing. Lane keeping assist deserves its own spotlight because it's uniquely terrible at its one job, keeping you in your lane. A 2024 forum post on mdxs.org reported a faulty multi-purpose camera causing simultaneous LKA and adaptive cruise control failures in a 2018 Acura MDX. But when these systems fail, they don't just stop working, they actively fight against you. Now imagine driving down a straight highway and having your car randomly jerk the wheel left and right like it's playing ping pong with the lane markers. But here's the truth. The GM Lane Keep Assist does very little, making it worse than useless. I have very seldom felt any nudge in the steering wheel, and letting the car drift toward the center line, or edge line, only gives me that posterior nudge 1 in 5 times at best. So either it doesn't work when you need it, or it works when you don't want it to, and just when you think that's bad. This system is so problematic that some owners are literally taping over the camera to disable it. Speaking of systems that fight against you, this next feature makes even parking feel like combat. Feature number 16, panoramic glass roofs. Glass at the top of your car doesn't serve much purpose despite being a growing trend. The perks end at a nice sky view. It doesn't open, it doesn't vent, it just sits there looking pretty while slowly turning your cabin into a sauna. But here's what they don't tell you. The plastic liner under the roof cracked on mine, and by the time it was replaced, the cost was $4,000. Sunshades don't block much heat. And on a hot day, you're basically driving under a heat lamp. Now let's talk danger. In a rollover, that giant sheet of glass becomes a flying hazard. And when they crack or leak, which many do, you're in for a pricey specialized fix. Here's the irony. They add weight, weaken structural rigidity, and hike up repair costs. But hey, at least you can stargaze while your car depreciates faster. But if glass roofs cook you alive, this next feature makes your engine work overtime just to look green. Feature number 15, engine start-stop systems. But here's the truth. Start-stop systems are punishing your car every time they activate. They drain your battery, stress your starter, and cut oil pressure exactly when your engine needs it the most. According to Consumer Reports, cars with these systems burn through batteries 40% faster. And that annoying lag when the light turns green, that's your engine scrambling to wake up. But here's the part most drivers miss. This wasn't built for you. Start-stop systems weren't designed to save your money. They were built to help automakers pass government emissions tests. The fuel savings, negligible in real-world driving. The repair bills, very real. It gets worse. Honda is currently being investigated for start-stop systems that fail to restart, leaving drivers stranded at intersections. Because nothing says innovation like being stuck in traffic with a dead car. But if stopping your engine sounds bad, wait until you hear about the transmission that never shifts at all. Feature number 14, dual clutch transmissions. Dual clutch transmissions were supposed to give you race car performance with automatic convenience. Instead, they gave you race car maintenance costs with grocery getter reliability. But here's the catch. Ford's 6-speed PowerShift transmission and Hyundai, with its 6-speed and 8-speed DCTs, have a high premature failure rate. Ford's PowerShift became so notorious, they eventually recalled over 1 million vehicles and paid out billions in settlements. And that's just the beginning. Hyundai and Kia are still dealing with the fallout from their DCT disasters. Here's what gets worse in daily driving. In stop-and-go traffic, DCTs are jerky, hesitant, and downright unpleasant to drive. They're designed for performance driving, not sitting in traffic or parallel parking. And when they fail, and they often do, repairs run $2,000 to $4,000, because these aren't simple automatics. They're essentially 2 manual transmissions with computer-controlled clutches, and complexity equals expense. But here's the kicker. Unless you're planning track days every weekend, a DCT is just an expensive way to make daily driving worse. But if complicated transmissions are bad, this next improvement makes changing gears feel like playing a guessing game. Feature number 13, button shift knobs. In a world where speed and instinct matter, hunting for a gear button feels like solving a puzzle at the worst possible time. These setups feel awkward, especially in a rush. You're thinking more than you're driving. Here's what drivers hate. Chevy's dial shifter, for example, has become a fan favorite for complaints. Drivers hate it. It's not fast, it's not intuitive, and it adds stress to a split-second decision. And let's talk comfort. Many drivers naturally rest their hand on the shifter. With buttons or dials, there's nothing to grab, nothing to guide your instincts. But here's the catch. Sure, it frees up console space, but at what cost? You lose tactile feedback, you lose muscle memory, and most of all, you lose mechanical simplicity. These designs rely on electronics. That's great until a sensor fails or a circuit fries. Traditional shift knobs worked for decades without drama. When the electronics fail, you might not be able to shift at all, and good luck explaining that to the tow truck driver. But if buttons are confusing, wait until your suspension literally deflates your confidence. Feature number 12, air suspension systems. Nothing rides like air suspension until the air leaks out. Then nothing sits lower than your car and your bank account. But here's the reality. The bladders will eventually leak, and if they don't get replaced, the compressor will overwork itself and eventually fail too. One tiny puncture in the rubber bladder and your luxury SUV starts sagging like a worn-out couch. Next thing you know, the compressor then works overtime, trying to maintain pressure until it burns out too. And just when you think that's bad, it's not just one component failing. It's a domino effect of expensive repairs. Bladders, sensors, valves, compressors, they all take turns breaking down. Even worse, some systems self-level randomly, making your car bounce like a lowrider at the worst possible moments. Here's the brutal truth. Repair costs easily hit $1,000 per corner. If air suspension leaves you deflated, this next feature will have you waving goodbye to functionality. Feature number 11, gesture controls. Wave hello to the future. Wave goodbye to functionality. Gesture control sounds like something from a sci-fi movie, but here's the truth. It works about as well as the special effects from a 1950s B-movie. Scratch your head, skip a track, adjust your glasses, full blast air conditioning. Your car can't tell the difference between a command and a casual movement, so every gesture becomes a potential accident waiting to happen. But here's what they don't tell you. Unlike actual people, cars can't read context or intent. The sensors add complexity, cost, and failure points to your electrical system. And when they glitch, and they will glitch, you'll be waving around like a frantic air traffic controller getting absolutely nowhere. Meanwhile, the old-fashioned button you could have pressed is sitting right there, laughing at your high-tech frustration. But here's the kicker. Seriously, who looked at reaching 6 inches to press a button and thought, this needs to be more complicated? If you made it this far, hit that like button. We got 10 more features you'd be surprised by on how stupid it is and how it ruins your car's reliability. Feature number 10, voice recognition. Saying turn up the heat, you'll get bass boost activated, and saying navigate home, but instead you get calling Home Depot. Voice recognition systems have turned our cars into automotive comedy shows, except the jokes are on us when we're trying to make emergency calls or adjust climate controls while driving. But here's what the data shows. Among infotainment issues, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay connectivity is the top problem, followed by built-in voice recognition, according to J.D. Power. Here's what happens in reality. You'll find yourself shouting commands like an angry GPS narrator, only to have your car completely misunderstand what you need. The system that's supposed to keep your hands on the wheel ends up requiring more button pressing than traditional controls, because after 3 failed voice commands, you give up and do it manually anyway. But now, imagine an emergency. When you need help fast, the last thing you want is your car pulling up the nearest pizza joint instead of calling 911. At that point, voice recognition isn't just useless, it's dangerous. Speaking of dangerous, this next feature literally takes your eyes off the road and puts them on a screen. Feature number 9, touchscreen-only climate. Whoever decided that turning on the defroster should require 3 menu taps while driving clearly never drove in winter or cared about safety. Remember when adjusting the volume meant turning a knob? Now volume, climate, and navigation are all buried behind swipes and taps. Miss the mark, and you're cranking the fan instead of zooming in on the map, all while doing 70 miles per hour on the freeway. But here's what they took away. Physical knobs gave you tactile feedback. You could adjust the temperature without taking your eyes off the road. And when touchscreens glitch, freeze, or fail completely, you lose everything. No heat, no AC, no defrost. You're not just uncomfortable, you're unsafe. And here's the catch. Touchscreen repairs aren't covered under powertrain warranties. When they break, you're paying premium prices to restore basic functionality. But here's the truth. Automakers act like this is progress, when it's actually regression disguised as innovation. But if losing your climate control sounds frustrating, this next feature makes even simple tasks feel like rocket science. Feature number 8, electronic shift knobs and button shifters. In emergencies, muscle memory saves lives. Electronic shifters erase that memory and replace it with confusion. These setups feel awkward, especially in a rush. You're thinking more than you're driving. Miss the gear and you could lurch into traffic, or worse, into someone's bumper. But here's the wake-up call. Chrysler learned this the hard way when their electronic shifters led to rollaways and actual deaths, resulting in recalls for over 1 million vehicles. What used to work, traditional shifters gave you instant feedback. You could feel what gear you were in without looking. These electronic systems rely on screens, lights, and hope. And when the electronics fail, you might not be able to shift at all. Even worse, some systems require the car to be running to change gears. So if your engine dies, you're stuck in whatever gear you were in. Here's the bottom line. There's nothing wrong with a mechanical shifter that works every time for 200,000 miles. This electronic nonsense is change for the sake of change, and reliability pays the price. But if electronic shifters are confusing, this next feature makes even seeing where you're going unnecessarily complicated. Feature number 7, digital gauge clusters. Remember when your dashboard had a speedometer, fuel gauge, and maybe a tachometer? Those simple, reliable gauges have been replaced with digital confusion that makes checking your speed feel like decoding the Matrix. What used to be a simple setup with a speedometer and a fuel gauge has now become a confusing mix of dials, icons, and glowing screens. Half the time you're not even sure what's broken. One software glitch and your entire dashboard goes dark. No speed, no fuel level, no warning lights. You're driving completely blind. But here's the real problem. These digital clusters are packed with sensors, circuits, and software that love to fail at the worst possible moments. And when they break, you can't just replace a gauge. You need a complete computer module that costs more than some people's monthly car payments. Here's the irony. Analog gauges worked for decades without drama. Digital clusters are complicated solutions to problems that never existed. Speaking of problems that never existed, this next feature fixes something that wasn't broken and breaks in the process. Feature number 6, turbocharged engines. Automakers discovered they could make tiny engines produce big power with turbochargers. But what they didn't tell you is that tiny engine big problems is more accurate than tiny engine big power. Here's the truth. Turbos add a lot of heat and put a lot of pressure on the engine, which can shorten the lifespan of components and sometimes shorten the lifespan of the whole engine. These systems add complexity, heat, and stress to every component. And when one weak link gives out, the whole system suffers. Those tiny 3-cylinder engines replacing proven 4-cylinders. They're working twice as hard to produce the same power as the larger engines they replaced. More heat, more pressure, more components that can fail. And here's the kicker. Turbo systems have intercoolers, wastegates, blow-off valves, and special oil systems, all additional failure points. But here's what's frustrating. Yes, some turbos are reliable. Toyota's 2.4L, Honda's K20C, Mazda's Skyactiv Turbo. But they're the exception, not the rule. Most turbocharged engines trade long-term reliability for short-term power gains. But if turbo engines are working too hard, this next feature makes your whole car work harder just to confuse thieves. Feature number 5, electronic parking brakes. Remember when parking brakes were simple? Pull a lever, car stays put. Release it, you're good to go. Those days are over, and frankly, we're worse off for it. Electronic parking brakes sound futuristic until the motor seizes up and your car becomes a paperweight. But here's what they took away. Traditional handbrakes gave you control. You could feel when it was working. This new system hides the problem until it's too late. And when these systems fail, you're not just looking at a stuck brake. You're looking at a system that might engage mid-drive or refuse to hold your car on a hill. The worst part? When your battery dies, some systems won't release at all. And repairs? You'll need special dealer tools just to service your brakes. What used to be a $20 cable replacement is now a $400+ electronic module nightmare. Here's the bottom line. Traditional handbrakes gave you control and worked for decades without software updates. This electronic system trades reliability for the illusion of sophistication. But as bad as electronic parking brakes are, this next feature will make you question if your car is working against you. Feature number 4, infotainment system failures. The most problematic vehicle category is infotainment. Nearly twice as many problems as the next highest category, according to J.D. Power. Your car's brain center has become its biggest weakness. But here's what's really happening. GM is working on a laundry list of issues with infotainment systems in recent models. They range from the screen going black to loss of audio to connectivity issues. Even more shocking, 1/3 reported experiencing at least one system malfunction, such as an unresponsive touchscreen or a problem with voice controls. But here's where it gets dangerous. When your infotainment system fails, you don't just lose your music. You lose your backup camera, navigation, climate controls, and sometimes even basic warning systems. I've seen owners doing a little dance with park, reverse, and on-off buttons, trying to reset their system while other cars wait behind them. Here's the real killer. The problem isn't just the failure. It's how distracting these failures become. When your screen goes black or gets stuck on the manufacturer's logo, you spend more time trying to reboot the system than watching the road. That's not just inconvenient, it's dangerous. But if infotainment chaos sounds bad, this next luxury feature will leave you out in the cold. Feature number 3, heated seat failures. Heated seats sound like pure luxury until they stop working, which happens more often than you'd think. But here's what the data shows. A common problem in many GM vehicles is having the heated seats not working, according to 1A Auto. The seats will light up like they're heating, but produce no actual warmth. Here's what GM owners are reporting. The memory seat control module, the computer that controls heated seats, needs constant resets. Settings that you input in the system aren't staying. Heated seats with remote start is on, but doesn't work. You open the system and they're still set where you put them, but they're not working as set. The worst part, a seat heater replacement costs between $660 and $695, including labor fees. And that's if you can even get the parts. Some manufacturers use proprietary heating elements that are nearly impossible to source independently. But here's the real kick in the teeth. Sometimes the seats get too hot, which can result in burns and injuries. So not only do they fail to work when you need them, they can actually hurt you when they do work. Talk about adding insult to injury. Speaking of injury, this next feature might just be the most dangerous convenience ever invented. Feature number 2, wireless charging pads. Wireless charging sounds convenient until it becomes a fire hazard. But here's what they don't tell you. These charging pads generate excessive heat during the charging process. And if the heat becomes too much, it damages both the charger and the device being charged. The compatibility between the charger and device is often mismatched, so your device won't charge anyway. And when the device deviates or misaligns from the designated spots on the charger, it results in ineffective charging. Even worse, if your smartphone has a thick case, it disrupts charging entirely. But here's the real problem. Wireless charging pads can overheat to the point where they melt phone cases, damage batteries, and in extreme cases, cause fires. Multiple manufacturers have issued recalls for wireless charging systems that pose fire risks. Here's the irony. You pay extra for a feature that charges slower than a regular cable, generates dangerous heat, and doesn't work half the time. Meanwhile, a $10 charging cable does the job better, faster, and safer. But as dangerous as wireless charging can be, nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to our #1 reliability killer. Feature #1, keyless entry and push-button start. The ultimate modern car feature disaster. Keyless entry and push-button start systems combine all the worst aspects of modern automotive technology. They're expensive, fragile, easily stolen, and completely unnecessary. Drop it, crack it, or lose signal, and good luck starting your car. But then there's the theft risk. These systems are gold for tech-savvy thieves. Relay attacks and key cloning are everywhere. Your $400 key fob becomes a tiny computer that controls everything, and when it fails, your car becomes a very expensive paperweight. Here's what should disqualify these systems. The theft problem alone should be enough. Thieves can clone your signal from hundreds of feet away, steal your car without breaking a window, and disappear before you even know it's gone. What used to work? Traditional keys required actual breaking and entering. These systems practically hand criminals the keys. But here's the real killer, the cascade of failures. When the system glitches, you lose everything. Can't start the car, can't shift gears, can't even lock or unlock the doors in some cases. And replacement fobs, some cost over $500 and require dealer programming. But here's the truth. Old school keys still do the job. No need for drama and hacking, just turn and go. A traditional key costs $5 to duplicate and works for decades without software updates, battery changes, or security vulnerabilities. Aside from these unreliable features, what if we move on with actually reliable car features that helps? Well, click this video to see the best features almost 90% of drivers don't know exist. Trust me, you won't regret it.